All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Terence Crawford says, once I beat Errol Spence Jr. and once I beat Charlo, there is no doubt I will be one of the best fighters of all time, which Terence Crawford would achieve 147 undisputed and going up in weight at 154 and become undisputed there. That's a very, very big statement by Terence Crawford. So, I'm going to break it down to y'all. Let's talk about it in this video. King Jr. got another video for y'all. Please share that you like and subscribe to the channel. And also share the video to get all your latest boxing news. And hit that bell icon notification to get all the newest boxing news that I release and come out. So let's get into this. Terence Crawford states that he's going to basically beat Errol Spence Jr. if he's successful against Errol Spence Jr. and become undisputed there. Terence Crawford be two-time undisputed champion. And then he's going to go up to 54 and fight Charlo because this is personal to Terence Crawford. This is personal, and he never liked it, Charlo. So he's going to want to fight him. If he successfully beats Charlo, he'll become undisputed there. And I have to agree with Terence Crawford. There's no doubt that his legacy would definitely be in the Hall of Fame and definitely be in the history books because nobody has ever achieved undisputed in 3 different weight classes. Now, Clarissa Shields, the woman female boxer, she achieved undisputed in 2 different weight classes, but there's no fighter has ever, women or men, has ever achieved undisputed in 3 different weight classes. It can be done, but the business of boxing gets in the way of a lot of that. And there's a lot of fighters. I believe Jaron Ennis could become undisputed in 3 different weight classes. But I think that Jaron Ennis is not going to be able to get these guys to fight him because they're going to maneuver and get everyone to duck and dodge. And Terence Crawford has an open window to achieve something so great that he'll definitely be over everybody over the pound for pound list, even Tyson Fury. In heavyweights ain't even supposed to be on the pound for pound list, but he will be over everybody if he achieves something that has never been done. And I think Terence Crawford can do it, but that's not an easy stretch because Errol Spence Jr. and Charlo are not easy opponents for anybody. Charlo showed me that he can be beat. He was getting outboxed by Tony Harrison. Charlo, he does have a vindictive to train really hard if he's focused. He wasn't focused in that fight. And when he did rematch Tony Harrison, he wound up knocking Tony Harrison out. And Charlo proven he can be beat. Errol Spence Jr. has not been proven that he cannot be beat. We've seen Errol Spence Jr. go through a lot of phases in his life. Everybody has doubted this man, saying this man was never going to be same after that horrific car accident with the Ferrari. And this man has proven the outcome that he is a sturdy and very tough fighter. And I ride with Errol Spence Jr. When it comes to fighters like Charlo or Errol Spence Jr., those guys are very, very hard to beat. I think that Terence Crawford has all the intangibles in the world to beat Errol Spence Jr. and Charlo, but it's not going to be an easy road. Terence Crawford is getting up in age. Terence Crawford is going to have to start making adjustments. And shout out to Fanon International Boxing for pointing this out. Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. needs to make this fight happen. Well, actually, this fight needs to be made as soon as possible for Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford, because you know why? Because there's going to be the excuse where people's going to say that Terence Crawford's too old. We know that Terence Crawford is 34 years of age, and they need to be trying to get everything in its power to make this fight happen between the two, because if they wait around and wait a whole another year until 2023 to make this fight happen, Terence Crawford will be 35 years of age. And Terence Crawford, in my opinion, will still be in his prime, but Terence Crawford is going to lose abilities. Like I said this before, when Terence Crawford was at 135 and 140, Terence Crawford was more effective in the orthodox stance than southpaw. When he moved up to 147, Terence Crawford has lost some abilities, and his abilities started to die down. And when he switched from southpaw to orthodox, he's more effective in the southpaw stance, and he's less effective in the orthodox stance. And he showed me that when he fought Kell Brook. When Terence Crawford fought Kell Brook, He didn't make adjustments for the first 4 rounds. He was struggling to get out the jab. And Terence Crawford, everybody was asking him about it. And Terence Crawford said, look, I beat him. I got him out of there. Just the same reason Terence Crawford said when he stated that he got dropped by Evis Kavaliauskas. Yeah, I got dropped by Evis Kavaliauskas, but I closed the show. So I have to give Terence Crawford his credit. He did close the show. But we can't look past it. Just because he closed the show, that doesn't mean he's going to do it to the next man. Even though he stopped his last 7 to 8 opponents and 10 opponents, whatever you want to call it, the case may be, we have to look at what specific details might hinder Terence Crawford to fighting a top-tier fighter like Errol Spence Jr. and Jermell Charlo. I feel like that Jermell Charlo is going to be a stretch for Terence Crawford to beat. That's going to be a very hard fight for Terence Crawford to beat. Even if Terence Crawford train his ass off and have the right training camp, that's still not going to be an easy fight for Terence Crawford. And it's not going to be an easy fight for Terence Crawford when he fights Errol Spence Jr. Even though Terence Crawford makes adjustments, Terence Crawford doesn't make adjustments faster than what Errol Spence Jr. make adjustments, because Terence Crawford is a slow starter. I don't care what any of you guys say. I know when I see boxing, Terence Crawford is a slow starter. He showed me that he was a slow starter in the Kell Brook fight. He showed me that he was a slow starter in the Sean Porter fight a little bit. So whatever the case may be, I'm not going to knock Terence Crawford. If Terence Crawford achieves something like 147-pound undisputed and 154, I will give Terence Crawford all the props in the world. I will big up Terence Crawford at that point, because Terence Crawford had did something that no man has ever done. Despite the competition that he fought throughout the past, if Terence Crawford achieved undisputed at 47 and 54, I have to give this man his props, and I will lender and support and be a Terence Crawford fan. I'm still going to ride with man down if Errol Spence Jr. win, lose, or draw. I will support Terence Crawford, and I will give Terence Crawford his props at 1,000%, because he has achieved something that he hasn't accomplished. Even if Terence Crawford lose, I will give him all the credit in the world, because he fought a top-tier opponent with Errol Spence Jr. He showed that he got heart, he showed that he got grit, and he showed that he's one of the baddest welterweights on the world. But in my opinion, I think he's going to get beat by one of the baddest welterweights in the world within Errol Spence Jr. Now, if he beats Errol Spence Jr., I will still give him credit. And if he goes up to 54 and beats Jermell Charlo, I will be extremely happy for the brother. I want to see Terence Crawford shine. But I know when I see styles. And I feel like that Errol Spence Jr. style is going to give Terence Crawford a run for his money. But if Terence Crawford achieved these achievements, I wouldn't be mad at Terence Crawford. I think Terence Crawford is an exceptional fighter, and I wish him nothing but the best. And hopefully we can get this fight happen as soon as possible. I really hope it can happen early towards the maybe August or September. I don't want it happening no later than November or whatever the case may be, because football, basketball, all the other sports is going to start kicking back up, and especially college football, and it's going to just be a trailing mess at that point. But with that being said, guys, Terence Crawford says, I'm going to beat Errol Spence Jr. and Jermell Charlo, and my legacy will be solidified if I do those things. And I have to agree with him. With that being said, guys, it is what it is. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. This is your boy King Jr. I'm out of here. Peace.